up, Ionics, and welcome back to a new quick win. Today we're talking about error handling because most likely you haven't really covered any kind of error handling in your application because it's a front-end application. Any Angular application runs as a standalone application somewhere. There's no connection to the backend, so it's really hard to spot errors that happen in production mode that your users might be facing. And therefore today we're trying out Sentry.io, a great service which I've seen recently because it announced capacitor support, and we will be able to integrate Sentry in our Ionic Angular application with a capacitor. I'm not so sure about that capacitor part and how it helps us, but we will focus more on the Angular part. And once we've integrated it, we will cover how to initialize the connection, how to log errors, how to automatically catch errors, and finally also how to provide source maps with Angular so we can in production see the error mapped to a specific line of our code so we can just debug and fix any error in minutes. If you're enjoying these quick wins, go check out the Ionic Academy, my place to help you with everything Ionic, which also hosts this quick win. Link below the video, available for all Ionic Academy members, so if you're not yet a member, definitely go check it out. And now let's jump into some error logging today. Alright, let's get started with our application. Not as always, we're gonna create a tabs interface this time, but most likely you already have an application, so it's just me creating that test application and you already got your own. The important part is now to install a few packages from Sentry. We're gonna add the capacitor, the Angular, and the tracing package. In fact, I'm not 100% sure why we need capacitor. Well, if you're just using capacitor with any other framework like React or plain JavaScript, then you don't have that Angular package for the initialization. But otherwise, I don't really see a huge benefit of using capacitor in here, but I will just keep it in here for later, or in general, I think it won't do any harm. On top of that, we install the tracing package, which can help us to easily see the route or the trace the user has taken to a specific error, including the routing in our application. So these are the three packages we need for now. Before we dive further into our application, we need to set up our URL to Sentry. So go to Sentry.io and create an account. You can actually create one for free as a developer. Free, this one, I'm on that tier. If you're a team or enterprise, business, whatever, there are costs involved, as you can see here. But having some decent error logging in place for enterprise is definitely a good idea, and in that case that's really nothing if you can immediately find an error more easily that happens in production. Now, once you're inside your account, I don't know why, but I've created an organization. I don't know if that's still the standard. And within that organization, I've created a new project. So just click Create New Project. I've picked Angular.js, or perhaps that JS is just meant that Angular is using JavaScript. Yeah, they also got all this little JS flag, so I guess that selection was right. Android and iOS should be for native development, but I really don't know if that makes any, if it changes anything about the project. Give your project a name inside your team. I already did this with my Ionic Capacitor project, and then you should automatically see the information on how to integrate this in your project. If for whatever reason you skip that, you can easily go back there by going to the settings and then to the client keys. So this DSN is what we're gonna need in our application later. So copy that over and let's put this here in the environment and call this one Sentry URL. And we're just gonna paste it. On top of that, I recommend you also put it into your environment production file because you will most likely forget about this anyway in the end, and then you're safe. Sentry recommends that we set up the connection to Sentry as early as possible in our application. And the earliest possible way is within our main TS, and that's also within their documentation. So let's do this. We can first of all import Sentry from our Sentry Angular package, and then we're gonna call sentry.init. And we're gonna have to do a bit of setup in here. Now, within their documentation, I also saw that they enabled prod mode for testing. I'm not sure if we actually need this. I did this as well, and I don't want to do it without. Maybe we're gonna do it without, but yeah, I will put in here only for testing. I will even comment it out for now. Now for the setup, we need to pass in our DSN, which we can now grab from our environment, the Sentry URL. At the same time, we're gonna use a release already. For the release, this is something related to source maps catching errors, and we will talk about this later and figuring out in which specific release an error occurred. And therefore, we're gonna set release to something like Simon's app, and then we should supply a specific version. Now, if you have a continuous integration server, you perhaps have some kind of build number, you have a release number, or what you can do as well, you can simply grab your package JSON and use the version from there. Now, Angular will complain quite hard about this because you're importing something from a plain JSON file, but that's actually not Angular, that's TypeScript, and we can fix it by adding 2 entries to the tsconfig file, which are resolve JSON module true and allow synthetic default imports. That is used all the time when you import JSON files directly. Now the error should hopefully disappear. Maybe I need to close this. Now it's gone. And then we have this dynamic release version set. That means if we increase the release version within our package JSON at some point and then release our application, that will be used as the new release name. Now, what we need as well is the trace sample rate. The documentation says zero chance of given trace being sent, 100% chance of trace being sent. For testing, I will definitely set this to 100%. I don't know what the best value for production is. And I really don't know, like 50%, that means sometimes it is sent and sometimes not. I'm not sure about that one. Maybe there's some expert from Sentry hopping into the comments what the best value is for production. But we will, for testing, keep it to 1. And then we're gonna add some integrations. That's gonna be an array, and I'm gonna copy it because I'm quite lazy. And this part is now interesting. So first of all, we now use the Sentry tracing package and import this and then use the browser tracking. We enable our origins localhost for local testing right here. And then you can pass or should pass in your own domain. So if you plan to host your application as a progressive web app somewhere on simon.io, you should put that domain into here. This is necessary to keep these traces. That's the whole point of installing the package in the beginning. So make sure you put in the right origins in here. Okay, that's everything for the general setup. Now we can head over to the app module, because in the app module we're also gonna put in a few changes. So let's first of all add 2 imports for the Angular router and once again for Sentry. And then Sentry recommends to add 3 providers. So we're gonna add them here. Let's talk about them one by one. Error handler can be imported from Angular core, and this one's also from Angular core. You see both imports here from Angular core. The first one is to actually provide a custom Sentry handler for the default Angular error handler. So whenever you saw an Angular error in your application, Sentry will now catch that error automatically. By using show dialog true, we can see a little pop-up in which the user can actually send a feedback. I don't know if this is really helpful in production. I guess most of you won't use that, so you can put it to false, but for testing, we're gonna keep it with true. Then, once again, we provide the trace service with a dependency to the Angular router, and we need to make sure that the trace service is initialized correctly. And this is a way of calling it right in the beginning. We could also put it into the constructor of the app module, but this just works better. Sorry for that. And then we got our 3 imports ready. Now, I'm also gonna bring up Ionic Surf already, and we're gonna see if that works. So I really need to remember that we haven't enabled prod mode. Could make a difference. I don't know if Sentry is perhaps not sending those errors in testing mode. So if we don't see anything, we shouldn't freak out. We know what's going on. All right, let's head over to a tab and just generate a few issues. First of all, we're gonna import Sentry like before. And then let me bring in a few error cases, or you could also just come up with your own, really just make your application fail. I want to show first of all 3 different things. First one, this will throw an error because, well, you can't access a property of null. The second one is directly throwing a new error. And the third one is directly using our Sentry SDK to capture an exception. So I just want to show you both these are automatically captured because Angular handles them, and also Sentry because we've provided the Sentry error handling here. And this one's directly going through to Sentry. To call those 3 items, let's quickly add the buttons to our tab 1 page. So really just connect them. I don't have to show you how. Okay, let's see. If we go to issues within my project right now, we shouldn't see anything. I really like that animation. Let's give it a try. Call fail function. And we first of all see the default cannot read property test of null. So we all know that error. Then we see the dialog appear in here, powered by Sentry. I don't know if there's a chance to somehow make this look better. On bigger application, it actually looks okay. Perhaps we can put in some CSS. I haven't researched this because I don't know that I don't think that you're going to use this. Perhaps during testing, that might really make sense. Anyway, we're gonna close this one, and I'm really excited to see if we get, yeah, okay. So let's close the chapter on our main TS. I don't think we need this. Okay. And what we see in here is, first of all, the information cannot read property test of null. We see the IP, the browser, some general information. I've used the Mac, the error exception again, the trace in here, and we could dive into the code, but this is actually just the transpiled code from TypeScript, and that is not really helpful. And that is the reason why we have to talk about source maps in a second. But for now, let's just be happy about the error. We as well have the breadcrumbs. We could even see some kind of navigation through the tracing we've enabled. And then we got more headers, IP, and a lot more information. Let's also trigger the error we throw here, which brings up the dialog as well. This one, because it's directly using the Sentry SDK, isn't showing the pop-up. So just a tiny difference you have to keep in mind, but usually pretty good to just have this under the hood, so you can just, if something goes wrong, some value from the API is not defined, anything like that, that's not super critical, but it's definitely something you want to know, and that's the place to use that SDK. And now we see we had the first one, cannot read property test. Then we have error, I am a manual error. That's actually coming from the throw new error. Once again, not really helpful in here. And finally, we got the one directly captured, the error with Sentry. Not too much information about it. Really, that's not too helpful if you want to debug it. What's that? Argument Angular is running in development mode. Yeah, well, That's fine for me. I don't know. Okay. Let's now get rid of all of these issues because we've seen it works. Next step is to provide source maps, because we can't really fix an error like that if we are just able to dive into this transpiled code. So to enable source maps with Angular, we're going to open the Angular JSON file, and we go to, let's see, build. Not options, but configurations, production, because I really only want to enable this for production. And there you either have the source map. Why is here source map true? I don't know. Either it's false or it's not even in there. And you can change it to true, or you can pass detailed information, which I've seen in another article. Which means we want to have source maps for the scripts and the styles. And we also want to keep them hidden, so they're not referenced in any other file if we enable hidden. And to see the result of this, let's see. I've created a build before that basically looked like this inside our build folder. Now I'm going to remove that one, and I'm going to run ng or Ionic build -- prod in the background to create a new production build. And we will check that folder in a second as well. I actually forgot about something that we want to do before. And that is one more thing to our logging capabilities. There's another way to log information or to enhance your information, and that is to configure the scope. Now I do this in one function right here, and I'm gonna add the button real quickly to call that function. But usually this is something you can do, for example, when the user has logged in. Then you got the information about like user ID, username, user email, whatever you want. Is there a user object? Yeah, looks like this: IP, email, username, and looks like you could also have any information. No, that was the wrong key. Oh, all right, back in the file, it can happen. This just means you can once supply more information for the logs, and whenever you now log something, you will see, okay, that user created the log. Or you could add some text like the language or any kind of information that you want to enrich your logging and to helps to figure out which user has the problem or why something specific happened, and that's pretty awesome. Now let me quickly check if this was changed. Yeah, error with scope is in here, and now we can finally run our let's do the Ionic build -- prod. I'm not running Ionic Surf again now. We will be able to see this in the final release. Did I also close the window? No, I didn't close this one. So let's see. We're now generating hopefully our source maps, and with the source maps in place, we need a way to bring that information to Sentry. That means we need to create a release within Sentry. I actually did this before, and I can see this within releases. Now, how did I do this? Well, first of all, you need to install the Sentry CLI. You can just do it globally at Sentry CLI, or you could also have it just as a dependency in your project. Might make sense if you're working with a team. Once you've installed the CLI, you can run login, which should hopefully open a browser, and there you will be able to find an authentication token. You're gonna have to paste it to your command line, and then you're basically logged in. If you want to do this within your CI server, I think it should mostly work the same. Or you can, as far as I know, also have like a Sentry, a .sentry whatever file in your project where you supply some information. Once you've done that, you can run the following code, and perhaps we're going to take a look at it in here because that looks a bit better. Sentry CLI releases. Then you put in your organization name. In my case, I'm going to show you what I exactly ran to create that release. Devdactic, then -- project, your project. Mine is named Ionic Capacitor. go check out how your project is named. Files, then the release name. So that is pretty important. This name right here is exactly the name that will be used in our application inside the Sentry init. So this is Simon's app because my package.json version is 0.0.1. The resulting release name in here is Simon's app 0.0.1. And that's exactly what you supply in here when you upload your source maps. And then you just have upload source maps and the build folder of your Ionic application. That's usually the default folder. Really, this is maybe the most important part. All these other things, you will get errors if the project or organization is wrong. But this one really has to be the same like this. This means when you create a release of your application, you really will upload it as a website or you put it into the iOS and Android App Store. In your code, here will be the release version as a string. And that is then connected to your release inside Sentry. And Sentry knows for this release exactly the source maps, and so it can match that information when an error occurs. Now at this point my build is finally finished. So I'm gonna run HTTP server to bring up a little local preview, localhost. What's it using? Right, there we go. So here is the production build of my application, not using Ionic Serve, just the HTTP server package. And then we're gonna capture something, I don't know, let's call a fail function again. Okay, we still see this because we have the dialog enabled. But now let's go back to the issues and let's hope there is a new issue. And when we now dive deeper into this issue, we see that it's still not connected to our source map. All right, I think Sentry wasn't happy about me creating a new production build and not re-uploading the source maps. So I've now just bumped my version to 0.0.2 and ran exactly the command to upload the source maps, which we have shown you before. Now I can see another release in here, so here's my second release, and let's finally try and do our error again. Let's just throw the JS error in here, and let's go back to issues. Those are the errors from before. Let's hope there's a new one now. I'm a manual error, and we already see, oh, that looks good. So let's dive into this one, and we can now see that in here we actually get the exact line of our code that caused that issue. And having this information is very likely gonna save you a lot of time. I could do this with the other functions as well, and I will also capture the error with scope. Interesting that it immediately inputs my email in here because I've now set this as my scope. So now we should be able to even see more issues coming up, and now even with scoped information, if at some point, no, you're not coming through. Maybe I don't know, perhaps I was in the wrong version. I don't know why I have two tabs open. Not really the smartest idea. So let's go back to that one, trigger this finally again, and then hope that at some point we see that information. So this is really just testing, so things can go wrong. Yeah, here we already got the information, my email, the ID, and we also passed the language as a tag. So all of that information is now here inside the issue that was caused. I don't know why this says no source maps, perhaps it's a different version. I also upfront created this application for iOS and Android, so we're gonna try and do this as well. I haven't updated the release version, so normally the error we now see from this here, where we also see this, it actually doesn't really look good on a mobile device, so I would definitely disable this later for a mobile application. But hopefully we now see a new issue coming up. No, 60 seconds should be something like 10 seconds ago. 22 seconds, that sounds good. And in the log queue, there's really so much information. Mobile Safari, iOS version, whatever, and then we got the release version in here. So my app is still on the device version 0.0.1, but still we got the exact same information. One thing, if you want to use this for your mobile devices, as always, run Ionic build, run Ionic cap at iOS at Android. And for Android, you're gonna need a little additional snippet that goes to your main activity. So you're gonna have to change this to this. Please don't click the wrong key. That's basically like you are used to at capacitor plugins with capacitor 1 or 2. We import it from the Sentry package and then we add it in here. And that's all we have to do for Android to make this work. I could also now do this from Android. It should at the same time trigger some kind of issue. But besides that, really, everything will work the same. We will get the same overview error dialog that's not really helpful in the end. But maybe you're gonna put it to use. And we see Android version 9. Actually, my real device version, the IDs that we passed, somewhere is the release version, and once again, the resolved information. That's basically it for the basic things that you can do with Sentry. The integration, the setup, the initialize, and the release information, catching errors either by directly using the Sentry SDK or just using Angular to handle all of this by using the default error handler that we get, which is, I think, out of the box, a pretty amazing result. And once you're done with that, you can dive more into the documentation of Sentry and really discover all the rest. And I'm pretty sure there's a lot more you could do, but just having this setup in your application, I think this is about like 80–90% of what you need to actually catch errors in the wild that happen in a front-end application, which basically any Ionic or iOS Android application is. Alright, and that's it for today. I hope you enjoyed this quick win, which was actually not so quick, but it should be helpful, and this is really a life-saving tool. Whatever your company has to pay for making logging happen, I think you really, as a developer, as a team lead or whatever, want to have this kind of confidence that you can see errors in production before your users actually asking, why is something not working anymore? You can configure alerts within Sentry. You can pass any information like the user information or text to Sentry to directly see which users, which platform is having the specific problem, and by passing the source maps, you're able to find the error in about no time, because really the transpiled code isn't helpful, but seeing exactly the line in which your code failed from a user in your Sentry dashboard, really, that's just epic. If you enjoyed the quick win, go check out the Ionic Academy once again, and of course give the video a like and hit subscribe for more upcoming Ionic tutorials. I hope you will have a great week, and I will catch you next time, so happy coding, Simon.